Hello, hello, everyone. Um, we are coming to you live with lots of great news. And if you haven't seen the news, we are wearing new T-shirts and we have a new logo at the top here. And we are here to talk about the new brand, Every Texan. So here with me today, we have CEO Ann Beeson, and we have our board chair, James Aldrete. Thank you all so much for being with us.
Thanks, Gina. Excited.
Obviously, we know that people might have a lot of questions about, what we're doing, what the new brand means. And so that's kind of what we're here to do today, to dive in and talk about that. As we let people log in, do we have any, I don't know, do y'all want to say a few words about our fabulous new T-shirts and new look here?
Sure. I'll jump in first and then James can build on it. Well, we love this new name, Every Texan, because it is people-centered and it's Texas-centered and it's equity-centered. And that's what we're all about. I mean, we believe that social justice requires public policy, and we think that this name really more truly reflects who we are, who we've been all along, and our strong social justice values and vision for Texas. And of course, I have to add that absolutely love the logo and the new colors. And as you can kind of see, like, I'm kind of a fan of these types of colors anyway in my life. So that was a plus when our wonderful branding design team came up with this very optimistic, hopeful logo that has Texas right there at the center of the universe, which is where we know it is.
Great. James, I don't know if you have any kind of initial thoughts.
I'll just say, it was great to see on Facebook yesterday an old boss of mine who was also a former ED and leader of CPPP, Diane Stewart, who kind of came up with that CPPP name, just to also embrace the Every Texan. Times change, and it really has a chance to kind of refocus, recommit yourself to the purpose. And what I do love about the name is it both recognizes the individual kind of Texas spirit, that there is a level of individual responsibility, but that we're still in this collectively. And so that balance, I'm real thrilled about. Also, if I could, real quick, just a shout out to Amanda Adams, who kind of carried us through this rebranding prospect challenge, guided us through with a lot of stakeholder interviews and input. And we got a kind of like a little bit of a reality check and then a chance to kind of grow in this process. So she was a huge asset in this process.
Yes, this has definitely taken a village, and, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about, talking to different people, obviously inside the organization, outside the organization, people who love us, people who don't love us. And kind of getting feedback from all sides for a very long time. So this has been a long time coming. Before we get into it, I want to go ahead and share our launch video. And so that's very short, but we'll throw it up here on the screen for a second, and then we'll dive into some more conversations.
Great.
All right. All right. There we go.
There's a Texas where people of all backgrounds care for each other and share in our prosperity, where every family can get the health care they need when they're sick, where every child gets a great public education, where everyone has the community resources they need. For 35 years, we've used data and policy solutions to expand opportunity. Texans have a tough road ahead. Social justice requires public policy in good times and bad. At Every Texan, we are proven experts at strengthening public policy so each and every Texan can thrive.
All right. So that is our fabulous intro video. We've got a lot of more fun graphics and stuff to come. And we obviously want to share with you, part of this rebrand has been our new website. We have a lot of, it's been a long time coming. So I'm somebody that works on the communications side, and I worked on the back end of our old website, which I'm not sad that is gone. So I think just even on the back end, having things run more smoothly and look lovely and be easier to interact with. I feel like the whole brand is that way. So why don't we kind of dive in a little bit? Anne, do you want to take us through why did we do this? Why did we decide to rebrand?
Yes, that's a great question. Well, it goes way back, and James can kind of jump in and help me because he was absolutely critical partner in the process. But really, it came down to wanting a name and a brand that better reflected who we are and our social justice roots and our values. Now, we and just to say, and this is like something that our dear friends and our not so dear friends, I think would agree with, that our prior name, the Center for Public Policy Priorities, was kind of a mouthful. It was really hard for people to say without tripping up, even our own staff, and even the initial version of it, CPPP, was not so easy to say. And more importantly, on that front, we were actually getting confused with other organizations that work in the public policy space. So because of that, and because we really wanted like a brand and a name that just strongly communicated what we're all about and where we're coming from and why we need to be here, we put right in our strategic plan that the board were such close partners with the staff in developing that we really wanted to go through a process to see whether it made sense to change our name. And anybody out there that's been through a branding process knows that kind of the issue of the name change comes at the very end. So we actually did a ton of work, and we'll share a little bit more about that as we get into it, just to get really clear on what was most important about our identity and what we wanted to communicate. And like everything else we do at Every Texan, it was absolutely informed by data. And Gina, you mentioned this, like we reached out to so many different partners, hundreds of partners, to fill out surveys and give us input on our current organizational brand. And then we also did a lot of one-on-one interviews. And then we looked very carefully and culled through all that information and data as a branding team, which included multiple fabulous minds on our staff, to really figure out what was most essential. And then once we came up with that fantastic language, which again, we'll share a little bit more about in a minute, it was almost earlier to get to the very last stage in the process, which was to consider whether it made sense to change our name. We had lots of stakeholders confirm that our current, our now prior name was confusing and a little hard and didn't maybe say enough about who we were. And that's what led us to kind of look at new names. And when we found Every Texan, we just kind of knew that we had landed there. So I would love, James, for you to jump in too and share a little bit what it felt like. Since we were so grateful to have your communications expertise, early on as part of the board advisors working with us on the branding project. Yeah.
Sure. I'll start where Gina didn't want to go, and I'll just want to go with the website for 1 second. What you have at CPPP, the organization, is you have a bunch of bad geniuses. And when you got to the website to kind of see a lot of their work, it really felt like you went into their library coves of academia, and it wasn't quite user friendly. And so when you start to put some organization to that, you have to go back to a lot of that introspection. And you can either grow intentionally or you grow because of there's challenges that have come up. And part of the website was a reflection that we stepped up to every challenge that was there, and it just started to kind of get layered on a desk. So this was a real nice opportunity. We have a name now that reminds us of what our purpose is. It keeps that kind of front and center. To be a purpose-driven organization, I think is the real key. And so the fact that it had so much involvement from board stuff, huge amounts of staff involvement on the structure of things, going out to our outside stakeholders, and we're coming back more purpose-driven than ever.
Amen. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I think we want to communicate today is that the purpose and that mission hasn't changed, and the way that we're doing our work is also not changing. The thing that is changing is, when we step into a brand that kind of speaks to who we've always been, it's kind of like that's where you found your space, and so it's taken us a long time, I think, to kind of a lot of what we dove into throughout the process was peeling back the layers of things that maybe were muddying the waters of what we did. And when we really got down to it, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about this, but the idea that we're really a social justice organization. And, even our
Absolutely.
kind of unofficial tagline at this point is social justice requires public policy. And I wonder if you could speak to that a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of the perfect time in this conversation to share our origin story, which we never tire of telling. We are so proud of it. And that is that we were founded 35 years ago by the Benedictine Sisters of Boerne, Texas, an incredible group of men who were at the time running the charity hospital in San Antonio and were fed up that so many poor people were sick when they didn't need to be sick, if only they had had access to affordable preventive health care. And so what they did is when they sold the hospital, they took the proceeds and they founded a public policy organization. And that is because they knew that the only way to get to social justice in healthcare, to get to access to healthcare for every Texan, was through systemic policy change. And from the very beginning, their values were driven by social justice values, just as ours are today. And so in those conversations, Gina, which you mentioned, we got really clear that that's our reason for being. It's because there's too much social injustice, too much inequity in the world. What we're bringing to that is a particular skill set around public policy, right? And that's our offering. That's our contribution. But really, what we're trying to get accomplished is social justice. And we really like this this strong sentence too, because it's very easy to value the contributions of our many organizational partners in a similar sentence and to sort of make it clear, well, what's our role in the ecosystem? So you could say social justice requires organizing. Social justice requires voting. Social justice requires powerful, communications. You can really talk about all those different things. Well, social justice also requires public policy, and that's where we come in, right? So, yeah, part of it came a little bit out of a lot of work that we did around our values. So I wanted to say a word or two about that too, because it was really out of the values that we got to this social justice requires public policy and to the name Every Texan. And I don't know, I guess we should have been ready for this. We put up on the screen, the values. So I'll just name a few of them, but right at the top of the list is community, right? We believe in the power of community and a responsibility to care for one another. I can assure you that there are a lot of public policy organizations operating out there in Texas who do not share that value. And so it's coming both from a recognition of like the power to, that the only way to get things done is through community and in partnership, but also that responsibility to care for one another. And that's a value that has really come up so much in the last couple of months as we respond to the COVID crisis and see that some of our leaders, our state leaders, are absolutely not bringing a value of care for one another. They're, you know what I mean? That's not where they're coming from. That's where we're coming from at Every Texan. Equity. Equity is such a powerful value and lens for our work. And it's critical because of who we are as Texans today and recognizing that it isn't enough to just kind of come up with one size fits all policies, because if you do that, you're not going to attend to the long standing disparities that are the result of years and years and years, hundreds of years of discriminatory policies that have erected barriers so that, our Texans who are people of color and immigrants and other disenfranchised populations don't have the same opportunities that we do. And so we are really putting a stake in the ground around that as a core value. And again, that value of equity, just like community, comes right through in the name, Every Texan, as well as that credo, social justice requires public policy.
There we have the values, and these are on our new website. Beautiful. Which James, now we can show this off with fervor and passion and pride. It's so funny, the old website, we were like, we need to have a eulogy for the old website. But instead of doing that, why don't we show off the new website? So this is, this is under the About tab, and obviously people can, go to find out more about, who we are. And as people who, I do know that change is hard, right? And so, there are some people out there that are like, what? you changed your name, what's happening? But I do want to reassure people that we're the same organization. We just have the ability to reach more people without having a name to stumble over, and something that every Texan truly can feel is their organization. I think that's the other piece, is that with a name and an identity like the Center for Public Policy Priorities, you know, when I would talk to even my parents about it, you know, you can almost see eyes glaze over. And when you come to somebody with a name like Every Texan, and, you know, this, you know, even just the brightness and the color and the way that it feels, I think it just feels a lot more inviting. And so anyway, so we'll run through the website here just a little bit.
Can I just add one thing real quick, Gina?
Please do.
Yeah, I think there still is, and we knew it, that there was a lot of trust and respect for CPPP, especially for the longtime people that have been in there, the new brains that were kind of adding to it as well. But there were still limitations to it. When you make that name change, you also have to make a commitment that you're going to have a louder voice, that you're going to be making sure that you're marketing it. And I think one of the changes we've done in this process is to go from solely kind of capital focused to also working a lot in the metropolitan communities, especially. So we have really kind of spread out our work on local policy. And I think one of the things is we're also saying on those values, grit and truth, that our voice will be there, and we're not going to necessarily be quiet capital behind the scenes players. We have to elevate data. We have to elevate that truth. We have to elevate the lives that are at stake.
Yeah, I really think it's kind of an owning who you are, and who we've always been, but I think on some levels we've been kind of held back. And that's the other piece that was very challenging, but also really rewarding about kind of finding this new brand, was something that speaks to who we are and who we always have been, but also calls us to a greater, just like you said, James, just calls us to a louder voice, calls us to be aspirational. And I think that's the other piece of this, is that we know that this asks us to be bigger and more present and have more support than we ever have. And that's a little scary, but I think more than that, it's actually really exciting. So anyway, so just a little bit about the, website. I do know that for a long time we tried to figure out the best way to organize it, because we do have a lot of data, we have a lot of information, and we wanted to make that easily accessible for people. So you'll find here that there are these drop downs that will take you to different policy areas, or if we have current projects such as the 2020 census or Sick of It TX that are kind of more like, for lack of a better term, maybe hot topics. Obviously the About tab will tell us more about who we are and, our history, board of directors, all that good stuff. Get involved. This is something we've really been wanting on our website, is ways for people who come and find out, wow, 1 in 5 Texans, lacks access to quality healthcare. What do I do about that? And so these are ways to take action. Obviously, donating and supporting our work is still fundamental to how we operate. Events, you can ask a speaker to come, and then we have the data center. And then just to point out these top areas, these are kind of quick links to some of our policy areas up here, but then also Texas Ledge. Obviously a lot of people want to know what's going on with us at the Texas Ledge. And then we also have in Espanol, which will be something that we continue to have different parts of our website that speak to. That is actually for our Latino population and our Spanish speakers. Our prior name was not even, you couldn't even translate it into Spanish, which was another problem. And so obviously we want to be able to speak to all Texans, to every Texan. So let's see, I'll just do a quick scroll down, but we don't want to spend too much time here. So just a really beautiful website, lots of hard work by staff and outside organizations. Obviously we're going to have a lot of data spotlights. You can find all our previous resources as well. We've got our blogs up here. So we hope you'll head to everytexan.org and take a look around. It's very user-friendly. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more. We already kind of talked about, our values, and I wonder if we could walk through the bold policy roadmap that has also been announced with our brand change.
Absolutely. So we are all about using this new name and brand to advance real change in Texas. So it's not just about a name and a brand, it's actually what we're trying to accomplish. And one of the things that we actually like about the name is it's actually very easy to use the name to begin a sentence about what it is that we are demanding for Texans. And that gets us right to our bold policy roadmap. That every Texan has a good job, that every Texan has access to quality health care, that every Texan in every Texas community has the public resources that they need to thrive, that every Texan, has can go to a good quality public school, right? And so we are launching and elevating this roadmap at the same time that we're launching the brand. And then the other thing that I want to kind of mention is that, wow, I mean, there has never been a time like this with the pandemic in our lifetimes. And it has exposed the vulnerabilities that Texans have always faced. And we think it's critical to point that out. Yes, it's an unprecedented time and an unprecedented crisis, but Texans were already vulnerable, and that was because of public policies. And what happened is that the pandemic and now the recession is making that worse. So what we are really thinking about at this moment as we sort of launch this kind of bold vision for Texas is, what are the short-term policies that we need right now to save lives and livelihoods in this pandemic? I mean, it has shown us more than ever before that public policy can determine who lives and dies. That is profound and it's powerful. And at the same time that we're advancing those short-term policies, we must connect them to this bold long-term policy roadmap. Because the fact of it is, some of these policies that are being promoted and even passed, thank God, by some leaders as emergency fixes are policies that we need to become permanent. And really a perfect example of that is paid sick leave. We've been fighting on the front lines with so many partners to get paid sick leave for every worker in Texas. And we were successful in getting policies passed in Austin and San Antonio and Dallas, which unfortunately are still caught up in the courts, because of special interests and state leaders that oppose them. Well, then this pandemic hits and suddenly everybody understands why, of course, it's not a good idea for a worker to have to go to work sick. It threatens them, it threatens our public health system, and it's totally not fair to ask them to choose between going to work sick and foregoing a paycheck, right? And so that's a perfect example where, yes, we need these fixes right now, but we need to also keep our eye on the long term and say, what are those policies that we need to become permanent? What are the very aspirational and visionary policies that really will give every Texan access to healthcare, every Texan a quality education?
James, I wonder if you might take us a little further down that. You are so involved in supporting so many Texas progressive groups who are partners. And I wonder how you see every Texan's role as a part of a larger ecosystem working to change Texas.
I said, there's a lot these days you can kind of be depressed about, but really if you take heart over the past 6 years and you forget about that little incremental change, I think there's been a real growth and nurturing of a culture of collaboration. And that we're part of a larger ecosystem that's there. I think you can see it, and talked about the paid sick campaign. We were the policy backbone to show that we're not out of the ordinary, and how other even southern states have done it. People always like barometers to make sure that they're not too far out on a limb, but they also understand, because of our work or because of every Texan's work, the number of people that are at risk by lack of action. And I think, again, it's, as Ann mentioned, this unfortunate combining of crisis right now is kind of crystallizing where those fault lines were. But on a number of things, you would see, I help out some other safety net organizations, and Once Upon a Time was one. When it came to census promotion, The data came from us. You just saw it in a URL. The URL was still nothing that like could send you back to understand the resource that now every Texan in that kind of unity is there. But real credit to Ann and to your entire leadership and team for really kind of building that culture of collaboration and the fact that we're all in this and that we have our different strengths. But the policy expertise, the data analyst, analysis aspect of it, and increasingly our ability to kind of do leadership development and advocacy is lifting up a number of organizations.
Thanks, James. And I also wanted to, you had talked about COVID. Obviously this whole process was happening, way before the pandemic hit. And so I know you wanted to comment on what James said, but I just thought we could dive into a little bit about how the pandemic also kind of affected our process.
Absolutely. Well, like so many organizations, ours, was also, we had to act very quickly, of course, when COVID really hit and showed up here in Texas, and we had to move very quickly to telework. And we have all of our amazing staff like working so hard from home now. And the brand launch scheduled for early April, and we had a lot of planned around the brand launch. And so you can imagine it was quite challenging to know that we of course had to put that on hold for a while, and really it was in the course of doing all of the immediate response work that we did around COVID-19 and really making a big difference. Some of these issues that we work on can seem like they're in the weeds, but they have very real impact on people's lives, right? And so we were on the front lines of persuading the state of Texas to sort of accept special dollars that would actually help pay for COVID testing for anyone, even if they didn't have insurance to get tested. We were instrumental in persuading the Texas Workforce Commission to adopt more generous rules around unemployment benefits right now, right? And so as we were doing this work, the more we thought about it, the more we did it, we realized, wow, this new name and brand of ours really is the perfect fit for this moment, because this is a time when we have to care about and make sure that we are protecting and supporting every Texan. And it really, after a lot of conversations internally, that we knew that we just had to go out with this now. And as I mentioned earlier, when we saw this connection between the work we were doing, in emergency response to COVID and our long-term policy roadmap, that we thought this is not the time to kind of stand idly by. This is not the time to sort of wait for somebody else to step forward or to say, let's just like go forward with some incremental changes and hope that someday we see an impact on the lives of Texans. This is a time to be bold, and with a bold vision and the specific policy solutions that we actually need to change the future of our state. This is tough times. This is not easy. We're not trying to be Pollyanna-ish about the challenges that we face. These are very hard times that we are in, and we're going to be in them for some time to come. But as we are kind of developing in partnership with all these incredible partners, like James mentioned, the roadmap, we have to rewrite the rules to build a more just and equitable Texas. We get to this economic recovery, we have a better state that really does give Texans of all backgrounds, every Texan, again, right there in the name, the chance to thrive.
So good. So excited. I wonder, I know we have a few questions. Mostly people are really loving, the new brand, which is great. But I'm, looking at the live comments here, and actually I thought that our fabulous development team, so Amanda Pawson, she said, how does the new name reflect our donors, supporters, and supporters' values and vision for Texas? I know we've kind of answered that already a little bit, but I thought we could address it. And Amanda has obviously done some incredible work. I was about to say at the center. Oh my gosh, I've got to get my mouth around. I've been here for 10 years, so it's definitely going to take some retraining.
We'll keep every Texan at the center.
I know. There you go. There you go. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, we are so lucky to have incredible partners in our donors and supporters who absolutely align with our values and are so excited about this new chapter in the growth of our organization. And, this is what they care about. I mean, they don't want, they don't want incremental change either. They don't want, the same old. Like, they're really looking for an alternative to the reality that too many Texans are facing right now, right? And so, we are just so grateful to have so many of your supporters. We just like so many other stakeholders, we absolutely included our donors and supporters in this process and got such great feedback, incredible feedback during the branding process, and also as we prepared to launch. And it's just been so gratifying and humbling, really, to kind of see just how ready for this vision for Texas our donors and supporters are. And they're right there with us, and we're just so excited to have them coming in to support every Texan at this time that's hard for Texas, but also a critical opportunity to change the future.
I'd add to just, when this started 35 years ago with the sisters, I don't know that you could foresee that you'd have really 35 years of culture wars. And while data and policy is still fundamental to every Texan, we're not just the compilation of the individual issue lanes. I think the whole process of the rebranding, and Ann and you went through that, Gina, on kind of revisiting what our values are, what it is we stand for. When we're now every Texan, we're affirmatively talking about the dignity of every Texan. And so we're not getting in those political battles, but we are affirmatively there for the dignity of every Texan. And I think that speaks to the people who have always supported us, and to a lot of new supporters I think we'll be gaining.
That's a great point, because I think that's one of the things that, I just mentioned that I've been at Every Texan for 10 years. And so I know that that's something that both inside and outside the building that we struggled with for a long time, was how to integrate all of the policy areas, and just thinking about the whole person. It's just like, the foods you eat and the exercise you get affect every part of your life. Your ability to go to work and not be stressed because you have, you have sick leave, you have proper health care and access to it. That affects everything in your life. And so it's also, I think for our policy areas, somebody might be working on healthcare, but how does that integrate with economic opportunity? How does that integrate with, higher education for families and things like that? And so I think that's another piece that this brand, and even the logo, the idea that it's a lot of things coming together, for every Texan, but also for every Texan that makes up our state. And that's who we really are, is we are a state full of beautiful and wonderful and talented people from all sorts of walks of life. And we want to represent every single person and, be able to fight for them on every level. So I don't know, Anne, if you have some closing thoughts for us.
Well, I mean, I just want to kind of say, building on what you both said, that, in this brand and in this new name is the recognition that Texas's greatest resource is our people, right? And so everything that we do is sort of people-centered and people-driven. And just also to say that we are really celebrating the people of every Texan, our organization as well. And, there's this phrase that, we've been saying a lot, which I really love, which is that we're people who know a lot and people who care a lot. And, again, we're well known, as James said, and as you said, Gina, for being kind of like the policy wonks at the Capitol and all that. But it's never been just about expertise. Everyone that works at this organization is incredibly passionate about our vision and our mission, and totally aligned in terms of our social justice values. And I would just say, connecting back to our the earlier question that Amanda raised, that is absolutely true of our donors as well. And that's why they support us, and that's why we're here. It really is because we know that people are our greatest resource, and that you have to give the people of Texas, the resources that they need, to achieve kind of their big dreams, and that takes some basic building blocks, and it takes barriers being taken away from too many Texans who've been held back in the past.
All right.
Actually,
Well,
let me
yes,
do
go
one more
ahead.
thing, Gina. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say
course.
that kind of on that note too, I just have to give another unbelievably loud shout out to the incredible team of people who pulled off this this rebrand launch. Obviously, every one of our board members, James at the lead, that were very involved, but oh my goodness, the staff, there's so many, too many names to list, but everyone on our communications team. This is a beautiful website that got built. Gina was an incredible partner on the design of the logo and so many other things. Amanda Gonzalez, incredible on social media. Amanda Poston and Cecilia Weber, our fabulous development team, and helping to raise money to support the launch, and our communications team and our external relations team, and every single person really had a role to play in both conceptualizing who we are and really figuring it out, and in coming to this name and this new identity and branding for an organization whose mission, as you said, remains the same, which is to make Texas the best state to live in, where people of all backgrounds can thrive. And so just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all the staff and all the board members who helped get us to this point.
And I want to close out. I would be remiss if I did not mention social media. So obviously we have a new website, and right at the top of that website, you have links to all of our social media. Please, 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 you're watching us on Facebook. We hope you'll like our page and share these videos, but we also hope you'll join us on Instagram, on Twitter. On Twitter, we are everyTXN. But honestly, if you go to any one of these platforms and type in Every Texan, you will find us. So we hope you'll join us there. We have, our YouTube account, which obviously has our video, and we will keep uploading great content. So thank y'all so much. Please continue to ask questions. We want you to feel like this is your organization just as much as it is ours. And we are so excited to say a big thank you to the Center for Public Policy Priorities and a big welcome to Every Texan. Thank y'all so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Gina.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, James. Thanks, Ann.
Take care.